Okay, hey everyone, welcome to Tactical Thursdays. This is where we get tactical and practical. We roll up our sleeves and we actually use the project and product management software to help the team be more productive, to have better insights for better outcomes, and to have control over all of the work that's happening so that we can better support our teams. As always, we'll be looking at Atlassian software. Specifically, we'll be looking at Jira. This is the gold standard in product management software. In previous reviews, we looked at Scrum and Kanban boards. We looked at visual timelines, Gantt charts, using Atlassian's AI to create automated rules to automatically set up metadata. We looked at creating epics, creating stories, creating goals, and linking them. And today we're going to be looking at a dashboard. So why would you use a dashboard? Imagine a scenario where you're managing multiple work streams and looking at this in the timeline or in a Kanban board or in a Scrum backlog is not enough. You also want a dashboard view. This gives you more insight into your data of what the teams are doing. So this is the default dashboard right here. This is how it comes. These individual boxes in blue are called widgets. You can change everything you see here. You can see they give you an introduction widget. You can review that if you want, otherwise we're going to get rid of it. The assign to me widget. This is a great widget because at any given point, any epics or stories or bugs that are assigned to you will come up in this window. So this is something if you wanted to check first thing in the morning every morning, like we've discussed in previous videos. As the PM, I ensure that I have a rule that anytime a story is created, if that story does not have an owner, I have the owner default to me as the PM. I review it and then assign it accordingly and speak to whoever's working on it. So sometimes the assign to me in this case is a way to funnel to the correct team member. But you can use this however you like. To show you everything that's assigned to you and ensures that work is not missed or work is not assigned to you without you knowing. This is a snapshot on the different projects you are working on. As you can see here, you can have a portfolio of projects. Because this is a test environment, this is an example. You can see this tactical and practical project that we're doing in Scrum. And this is the discovery project in which we set up a goal, 2 examples. And then activity streams. This can do a good snapshot of what's happening across the entire project or the entire stream. If you're managing a particular Scrum team, 5 to 7 people, you can see everything in here across all of those guys and gals. Or if you're managing large programs on a portfolio level, then you can see the entire activity stream and you can filter these different things here. So once again, this is the default. There's some really important information here that I want to cover. The first thing you want to do is you're going to add this as a star and you're going to make this a favorite. The reason why you're going to make this as a favorite is because as the PM, what you want to think about is how can I create a default dashboard that I can then shift and lift to give to not one team, not 2 teams, but 30, 40, 50 teams. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up a default dashboard that they can see as a favorite and then customize that default dashboard however they like. Now, what you might say to them is, all right, guys, I'll allow you to customize the default dashboard however you like. You're in total control of how you run your projects. The only thing I ask is that you keep the assign to me widget, just as an example. And the reason why I ask that you do that is because anyone that looks at your dashboard and your team will always know that everything's assigned to them, and that will ensure nothing is missed. So that is an example of how you can set up a favorite and a default dashboard so that you can roll it out to an entire program and still have some collaborative control in place, but still allows them the flexibility and the autonomy to do what they want. So let's look at the change layout button. We'll click this right here. And what you can see it's showing us is you can view 2 columns, 1 column, 3 columns, et cetera, et cetera. So just to give you a flavor of what this might look like, we're going to do a left sidebar with a big picture on the right. So let's click that. And this is really good when you have a little bit of information here and you have more visuals here. And by a little bit of information, I mean on your left-hand side and more visuals here on your right-hand side, where you can add in things like charts. These 3 buttons here, these are called ellipses. You can see there's some additional information like share dashboard. We'll go into that later. Configure automatic refresh, view as wallboard. View as wallboard and view as wallboard slideshow just allow you to view these things in a full screen mode. I actually don't like this mode. I prefer it to view it in my browser. I think that's the preferred way for most people. But if you wanted to see this in a full screen view, if you really put a lot of time into configuring this almost like a scorecard, or you have different visuals across your pie charts and your Gantt charts, and you were looking at this in a room, maybe giving a presentation, you could do it that way. But for many years, generally speaking, we just view this in screen. So let's click on automatic refresh. And what it's saying is, how often do you want this to refresh? Now, what it's refreshing is this is going into your different Jira projects and instances and refreshing the information. So let's say someone creates a story, they assign that story to you. So what we can do here is we can say every 15 minutes, I want this to automatically refresh itself. And we'll click save. 15 minutes is a safe option. You can see right here, it says now that's saved. This button here will also allow you to refresh it on demand. So let's say you're reviewing this in a huddle or in a stand-up or in a project working group, and you are talking about something as it pertains to this widget. This can be any widget you want. And you don't want to wait for the 15 minutes and you're talking to everyone and it's an active working session. So people are working in the background. You can just go here, click that refresh button. And as you can see here, it'll refresh that real time for you. But 15 minutes is it's a good estimate. So what we're going to do here is we're going to hit add gadget, and we're going to start to add in some gadgets here. These little widgets here, they're called widgets or gadgets. We're going to add in some useful information. So what you can see here is it gives you some filters, all Jira, wallboard, and charts. And as you scroll down, you can see some important information. So we're going to start to add in uh, some widgets or gadgets here that are going to help you get a feel for what's actually happening in your different projects and programs as the PM, as someone that's working across multiple streams with multiple teams and giving you a sense of what's happening. So the activity stream is already there, the assigned to me. The next thing we want to add in is the average age chart. We're going to add that. All right, we'll configure this stuff on the left in a minute, but we're just going to add in the widgets first, and then we can play around with it later to make it visually look pleasing. But the reason why you would want to put in an average age chart is because you're trying to get a sense that if you start to lay out some structure and you say, okay, guys, so we're going to meet, we don't have enough volume to meet every day for a daily huddle, but we're going to meet every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we're going to sit down and we're going to give the client a demo on the third Friday of every single month. So the client gets a demo once a month, third Friday of every month. And we're going to release code after we review that demo with the client. That way we give ourselves a week to make any adjustments before we release that code. And we're going to run our sprints about every 2-3 weeks, really centered around that client demo, updating things based on the client's preferences before we roll out code. So what that should tell us is that in theory, on average, the stories that are raised should be anywhere between about 2 to 3 weeks old. And what that means in terms of business days, because we're not counting weekends, that is anywhere between 10 to 15 days. And the average chart will actually display this out in the bar chart you'll see later. This is very important. If you see huge spikes in your bar chart where it's going up, what that's saying is things are taking longer and longer and longer to be resolved. And maybe there's a reason for that, or maybe it's an insight that you weren't aware of. But once again, insights for better outcomes. This is going to give us insights. All right. Average number of times in status. We're not going to use this. This is just going to tell us the time that it's in open versus closed versus review, reopen. We don't really care about that. We want to care about average time in status, and so we're going to add that, and I'll tell you why. Because when we first create a story, doesn't really matter how long it sits in create because it can sit in the backlog for a while before it's prioritized. If we have a good grooming process in place in which we groom stories once a week or once every 2 weeks, by grooming, we go through them with a comb to make sure that they're ready to be worked on and the team has everything that they need. That's what we mean by that. Let's say, for example, it sits in progress for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. We might want to say, why do we have stories sitting in progress for so long? If on average, our sprints are about 2, 3 weeks, that wouldn't make any sense. So that's going to give us some insights for better outcomes. Bubble chart, we're not going to use. I'm not really a fan of bubble charts. Created versus resolved. This is definitely another one we want to use. Let's add that. As the name says, this is going to display for us in a line chart. You can customize it to show different charts, but it's going to show us in a line chart, basically green created, red resolved. And you're going to see the spread between the two. What I mean by the spread between the two is what's the difference between that? Are things being created and worked on, but then they're being closed much, much later? Once again, this is an insight which may tell us that there are things that are happening within the teams that are not very healthy. You don't want to see too big of a spread there. Days remaining in sprint gadget. This is helpful. We're going to add that. The reason why this is helpful is this is a good timer. So if you're reviewing this in a huddle before you go into your Kanban or your sprint backlog, this is just a good insight. It jumps out at everyone to say, we have 7 days left, we have 5 days left, we have 2 days left. It's like a counter. Filter results we're going to add. We're not going to use that. We'll cover that in another video. This is a very, very sophisticated, very important tool. Basically, the way that this tool works is we write a query, a very simple query using JQuery, query language, Jira query language, JQuery, and we can filter on all different kinds of results based on different metadata we want to use. And then we can see all of that. We call that query, and we can see that into the filter. We're not going to use the heat map. We're not going to use the introduction. Issue statistics. This is helpful as well. We're going to add this. This is going to tell us, for example, that we have 20% of our items in open status. We have 40% of our items in progress status. And we have another 40% in done, for example. And this is just an estimate of where things are. So when we think about how close are we to completion, if we're working with the team and obviously we trust our team and they mean well and they tell us, oh, we're very close to completion, but we look at this and we see that, there's still maybe 60, 70% in progress. How could we be close to completion if we have so much in progress, right? So maybe this is just an issue of updating metadata. Maybe this is an issue of a misunderstanding versus the reality of what's happening here. Insights for better outcomes. Okay. We're adding a ton of things here, so keep in mind that you can create multiple dashboards. You can configure your dashboard in multiple ways based on the layout we looked at, but I'm trying to show you all of the widgets that could help you, and then we can configure them more later. Jira roadmap. The pie chart is another really good visual. Once again, the way to say, maybe we have 6 guys, 6 gals on the team, and we do a pie chart breakdown per person because we want to make sure that we're allocating work, we're evenly distributing the work across the team. But we know that maybe Johnny is a go-getter and Johnny tends to take on a lot of work. It's not fair if when we look at Johnny in the pie chart, if Johnny has 40, 50, 60% of the work and everyone else doesn't. We want to, assuming that the work is all equal, which I know isn't always the case, but the pie chart gives us a visual to see how the work is being spread. You don't have to do the pie chart by user. You can do it by different fields. You can say by status, etc. Recently created chart, similar to the created versus resolved chart. This will give us a feel for when we are working with more mature teams and they are working more autonomously, where they are creating items themselves, assigning items themselves, resolving items themselves. And maybe we're only stepping in once in a while to say, when we're about to prep for the client demo or review the client's feedback or looking at things before a release, where we're sort of more light touch. This is for much more mature teams. if we see huge spikes and recently created that are unaccounted for, this is an indication for us to ask what's happening. Same thing with resolution time. If our sprints on average are 2 to 3 weeks, but it's taking us 20, 25, 30 days to actually resolve things, that's an indication that we're not working within the sprints. Maybe we need to adjust the sprint window. Maybe we need to adjust the work in progress, the WIP limits. This is an indication if we see spikes here. Sprint burn down gadget, great gadget. I'm more of a fan of a burn up than a burn down, but I know, traditionally most folks look at burn down. This is going to be an automatic calculation to tell you, all right, I walked into my sprint with 50 points, and it's going to average out what that looks like across the sprint duration window to say, okay, I'm expecting you to get XYZ points done per day. And if you're not getting that done per day, it shows spikes in the line burning down. Your sprint health chart, this is another great one. It's a great visual showing your percentage breakdown of open, in progress, closed. Starred filters, okay, time since chart. Two-dimensional stats, this is another great one. Let's add this here. All right, I think that is enough for now. We went through most of them. So we're going to close this, and now we see our dashboard here. We're going to say change layout. We want to maximize the layout, so we're going to say 3 columns, give us the most amount of information we can. And we're just going to scroll down to get a feel. And we see here 2-dimensional filters assigned by me. And we're going to see sprint health here on the left, sprint burn down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just going to scroll to the bottom because we added a lot of stuff here just for example purposes. And let's go to something like, let's see what we have here. Filter results. Looking for a good one. Let's just do issue statistics. We only have 1 or 2 items here in our test tactical, but you can see we just drag this widget and we move it to where we want it. We left click it and we drag it all the way to the top. Saving. Maybe we got to drag it this way. Yeah, because we added a whole bunch. See how easy it is here to just sort of drag and drop these things. I'm trying to get it onto that 3rd column. That's okay. We can play with that later. But basically, okay, there it is. I can see the column by the dotted lines. And you see here, you click it and you drag it, and now it drops down. And this is where you configure it. Save. Now it'll populate some data. Now keep in mind that this is a test project in a testing environment. So there's very little data here. There's only a couple stories, a couple epics. So there's not a lot of information here that's going to make sense because there's only assigned to me here. 100% time is elapsed. No story point estimates have been made, but where this is helpful is if you are actually working in a sprint and you've defined your sprint windows, it'll actually tell you how many points, how much time has passed, how much time is left. Scope change is just basically if you start your sprint with 50 points or 50 stories, the amount of points or stories you add in after the sprint has been added. That's your scope change, highest percentage flagged, etc. The reason why that's good to know is because if on average you get 50 points done or 50 stories done per sprint, but you always have a 5, 10, 15% scope change, what that's saying is that you're probably coming into your sprints a little too low. In other words, the team can handle more. So you want to come in a little higher. Ideally, you don't want a lot of scope change in your sprints. You want your sprints to be pretty constant, pretty steady. You want your teams to know that when they come into work on a Monday morning, that they know what their workload is, they can plan for their workload, and you really want to pull the anxiety levels down, because if you constantly have a high level of scope change, what that means is they never really know what they're going to be working on. Things are constantly being pulled in and out of the current sprint window. So that's just one of the health indicators you can see here. But aside from the actual data for this gadget, what I want to show you guys is just the way that you configure these things. So you can see here for this two-dimensional filter, and then we'll wrap this up because we're going to be going on about a 20-minute overview here. This will allow you to do a save filter. This is where we talked earlier about actually creating a query. So you can say something like, maybe show me only high priority items. You define your x-axis, your y-axis, assigning, let's say maybe the y is status or priority. Sort by natural, ascending. Let's say number of results 5, update 15 minutes. All right, and that's how you would update these charts. Same thing here with the sprint burn down. You would define the name of the board. It would automatically update based on your sprint. You see there it says auto, and refresh interval. Once again, refresh it every 15 minutes. You click save. This isn't going to populate a lot of valid data here once again because we're in a testing example here, but I'll just make this a little larger to show you what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm going to refresh the page, see if that fixes it. Okay, there it is. It's loading the data. This one doesn't seem to be loading. Okay. Yeah, they're all kind of, I don't know if the page is stuck, but the way you would configure one of these widgets is the way you would configure all of them. And that's basically clicking here on the 3 ellipses, hitting the configure button. Okay, this one is working now. This is good. And then it'll give you some options for configuring. How many results do you want to see? 5, 10, 15? What are the columns you want to display? You can move these columns around. So you can say, well, maybe I want to see key first. You can add in different columns here. So there's no assignee in this column. So maybe assignee is something that's important. So after the key, maybe you want to see the assignee, and then that same thing, auto refresh every 15 minutes, and we'll save that. And okay, this one's actually working. That's good. And that's what I was trying to do earlier, make it a little larger. So we just hit that maximize button on the widget, and it's telling us the key, which will bring you to the actual story to show you more data. And once again, if you're working in a team where you have about 5 to 7 people, this will show you different assignees. You can go to their different profiles. Definitely encourage each team member to actually set up teams in Jira, set up a profile. It gives you the types of stories versus bugs versus epics. This purple lightning bolt icon is an epic versus this green bookmark icon, which is the story. This is just a summary that will bring you to it. And then the different priorities, all the priorities are the same. If you click the ellipses, it'll let you, change that. So let's just put this back here. Back to minimize. Okay. You could change the header. So you can see here that there's some, change the color. There's some different ways you can customize these dashboards, and you can get really creative here. The takeaway that I would love for you guys to take away from this is that first and foremost, after you set up your story templates, your Scrum, your sprint windows, your backlog, your timeline views, after you set all that stuff up and you're up and running, you want to take the default dashboard and configure the default dashboard for your teams. And keep in mind that you want to configure the default dashboard so you can roll this out to 30 different teams if you wanted by making it a favorite. And then what you'll do is you'll allow the teams to say, All right, so I've given you guys two-dimensional filters or assigned by me or sprint help gadgets. You show them how to configure the dashboard so they can update that as they wish. And as you're working with the different teams, you can say, okay, guys, let's pull up the sprint help gadget. And they can show you any additional gadgets they want, but you'll say, keep these two or three because I want to talk about these key things. The other key piece of information is the different widgets or gadgets you can add in here. So we added in the ones that I think are the most important. So your burn downs, your resolution time, issue statistics, your pie charts, as I scroll through these and I show you the ones that we added. And then you can configure it even further with the different colors and layouts. Um, where you can use the colors is you might group, sprint health gadget, sprint burn down gadget in a particular color. You might use groups to say these are the health. This color teal represents maybe the health of the overall sprints versus this color blue, which represents something else. So you can really get creative with these things. And then once you save them and you share the dashboard, what's important is that in this drop down, you can say public or my organization. In my opinion, if you're working inside of an internal organization and you have good security features in place, and public is public to your organization, not public to the whole world, you can keep it public, you can give it a name and then save it. And why that's helpful is if you save the dashboard as a private dashboard and then you want to share it with your teams internally, of course, not externally. If it's private, they won't be able to see it. Okay, so thank you guys so much for the opportunity to think about configuring default dashboards so you can have better insight to give your teams better outcomes and you can have more control so you can create a better collaborative environment. I hope that you take this opportunity to play around with your dashboards in Jira. And as always, if you have any questions on how to set this up, because we covered tremendous amounts of information, we covered double the information here than we normally cover. Please feel free to give me a call, shoot me a ping, reach out to me. I would love to help you with this stuff. Remember to get tactical and practical. And the way you do that is you roll up your sleeves and you actually use the software. If you have any more questions, guys, give me a call and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.